Am I the only one who enjoys that verbal notification?
I like it too. I like it.
I do. I do too.
It's nice to know when you're being recorded. That is appreciated. I'll give everybody another, 30 seconds or so to settle in, and then we'll get started.
Kids can give that disclaimer before Snapchatting you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That joke is being recorded.
I can see that as a meme. It's going to go viral.
A picture before my raps in class, kids being like,
oh, you know that those are, recorded. You know that's why I go out of my office to go find you, right? Yeah. I hear the rapping. Matt's classroom is right next door to my office, so sometimes I walk next door to rap battle. It's pretty fun. I am really good at rap battling, by the way. But,
yeah, sure, yeah.
Have you listened to Muppet Hamilton, Matt?
Yeah, I have actually. That was one of the best moments. I mean, awesome suggestion.
Yes,
I recommend for everyone else. First part of supporting at-risk students, support yourself by listening to Muppet Hamilton.
That's right.
Change your life.
All right, we'll get us started.
You guys have to do a podcast. This is just too good. I mean, let's just skip the presentation and just let you guys go off script, man. This is awesome.
Ed, are you a Hamilton fan, Ed?
My children are bringing me on board. Yeah.
Right, no judgment to anybody who's not a Hamilton fan, but Matt and I are both Hamilton fans, and I saw it on the same night together when it came to Proctor's. And a really big Muppet / Hamilton fan posted on YouTube Act 1 and Act 2, and it's pretty funny.
Okay, I'll check it out.
All right. So we're going to get started. As I mentioned, please feel free. Just a little housekeeping. We can't see you. And so we'd really like to make this as interactive as possible at any time. Please feel free to chat, put some things in the chat. You can feel free to chat with each other, but I'm going to be keeping track of the chat so that if there are any questions, we'd really like to tailor this to you. So if you have specific questions or specific things you're wondering about, please feel free to use the chat for that purpose. My name is Amy Horelchuk. I'm one of the assistant principals at Guilderland High School, and among my many roles, the most important one to me is supporting our at-risk students in a number of different programs, and one of them is called Focus, which we're going to be talking to you about today.
I'm Matt Pinchinot. I am a social studies teacher at Guilderland High School. And my role for Focus, I'm the coordinator of the program, and in the past, I've been a family teacher. So I've been involved in the program every year. I've been in the building. And believe it or not, despite my 15, at best 17-year-old looking face, I've actually been teaching for 5 years. So there's a little fun fact for everyone.
Mine as well, despite the fact that I also look like a 16-year-old. I just finished my 20th year in education. So, and he laughs at that. It wasn't a joke. So our goals for today, as the title suggests, we're going to talk about how to support your at-risk students. So we're going to give an overview of the Focus program where I'm at, and I work at Guilderland High School. And then we're going to give some background on the research that really drives our work and why we do what we do and how we choose to interact with students and create the program that we did through the ACEs and some restorative work. Then we're going to take a look at some specific student profiles. As you'll hear, there is no one definition of a focused student. So we'll go through what 3 different students might look like. We'll talk about the community building, which is really a linchpin of the program, and how you can help support your at-risk students with some staffing and other supports around the district that you might need.
All right. So to get the ball rolling, the Focus program, first of all, what is that? And as Amy alluded to, we're going to go into different segments of it in a lot more detail. But for a broad overview for all of you, our Focus program, it is a school within a school. So we hover a little bit over 70 students in our program. That's what we're going into for next year as well. And this program, it's structured so we have students from 9th grade all the way up till 12th grade. And some of the general supports and the structures that we have in the program, we break it into Focus Family, which is one of the main components of it. And I don't know any way to describe it other than it being a family. As you can see from how Amy and I interact, it really does. It's not just a family with the students, the staff become a family as well. You spend a lot of time together. And one of the motifs that's going to pop up during this presentation is how important time is, and that this isn't something that can be rushed. and that this is something that really does need and deserve, as all of you know, our time and attention. And so the core element of the program that we're going to look at, it's built around these 4 A's, as we like to call them. So everything that's going to come from it, we're going to talk to you guys about some of our community events. We're going to talk to you about the lounge. We're going to talk to you about family and about how we support students in different areas. But every support we have, everything that we do, it's all built around these 4 A's. So 4 A's, we have academics, attendance, attitude, and action. And as you know, no student is going to come from, you know, the exact same background, exact same situation as someone else. People experience and display and process trauma all in different ways. It manifests in different ways. And so these A's, while we have some students that struggle with maybe one of them, you might have someone who is a fantastic student and they're so polite and they always do their stuff, except they miss 20 days a quarter. Or you might have someone who is a fantastic, you know, student all around, they're always there, but just when they get into those frustrated modes, sometimes it's really hard for them to bottle up those emotions and not even just bottle up, but how to contain it or display it in a way that, you know, can or should really in society. And so attitude might be a piece. And then we all also know that we have some students who they won't be relegated to just one of the 4 A's where they'll find application across 3 or sometimes even all 4 of them. And that's one of the things that makes our program unique, is that we have students from all 4 and as well as any of the 4.
So as we move on to the different structures of the program, I'll answer a question that we had from last session, which was, you know, how does a student enter into this program? And we actually lean on all of the staff in our building, and anybody is able to recommend a student for the focus program. It could be a clerical, a monitor, a TA, a teacher, an administrator, a counselor, A's as the basis for a referral. Student who's in any one or multiple of the 4 A's. So that would be kind of a student's entree into the program. I'm going to start with academic support, what we call focus tutorial. The program has been around since 1978. It's a very long program. When you look at most districts in the 1970s didn't have programs for at-risk students. And so this program high school because there was a need for an extra support not related to a student's disability. Throughout the years, we've had classes. I love that, at promise students. Throughout the years, we've had classes such as English, math, and social studies and PE. At this moment in time, we have English and we also have PE for our students. And we have an additional academic support, which we call focus tutorial. And we use that for our 9th and 10th graders, small groups of about 6 to 8 students. And we have an English teacher, a social studies teacher, science and math, and they all have focus tutorial at the same time. So a student might be assigned to a social studies teacher for tutorial, but then if any one particular day they need extra help in math, they can go around to the room that's right next door that has a math teacher. So we use that as really a focused study hall, you might call it. But it's a time where the teachers say, okay, how are you doing? What are you doing on your goals? What do you have coming up this next week? Where do you need extra support? And we use those content teachers for that purpose.
And that kind of leads right into our focus family. So this, I'm going to preface and say this is honestly my favorite part of the program, our families. I love it conceptually. I love it in practice. I love everything about it. And I'll walk you guys through a little bit of my first foray into families. This was actually my very first day working in the high school. And I walk in, I'm not really sure what to expect. I have an agenda and I didn't know what really to make of it because I knew that this wasn't going to be a class where I was going to be doing any sort of direct instruction, but I didn't want to go in underprepared. So as we all know, it's better to over than under. And what happened kind of blew my mind. One of the students, Ryan, he's like, hey, what's up, Mr. P? And he's like, all right, everybody, circle up. And the students, so he's a senior, and all the other students, they grab their desks, they form a circle. I'm like, okay, so this is great. And then I'm like, okay, well, what happens now? And almost like reading my mind. He sits down and he's like, all right, let's talk. And those simple words, they meant a lot to me in a couple of different ways because one, the students were already starting to accept me as part of their family. They already accepted me in as someone who was welcome in their space. And something that I think is so key about family, every single good thing that you will hear us say about the program, every one of the best parts, is something that comes from the students, is generated by them. And this program doesn't just exist for them, the program exists from them. Everything good about Focus, and I firmly believe this, comes from what our students make from it. And our whole staff, we really, really do ardently follow that. So some of the things that we see in family, referring back to those 4 A's, students will do their own progress monitoring with those 4 A's. So this isn't a program where students are, forced to do it. This is a voluntary experience. They want to do it, and they want to grow. They want to improve. They want to change in whatever way that they feel that they need to. And family teachers, part of our role is helping them as they do that self-progress monitoring. But another big role is simply to be someone who's a listener and to be a mentor for them. So as I mentioned, students really do run a lot of the different discussions that we have in family, but this isn't something where we have some things where we say, this is shelved or that's too much for us to discuss here. It's a very raw and it's a very open space where I have no problem exposing myself to you guys and just a couple other points. But I have both, seen students cry in family. I've shed tears alongside them, and you feel their real experiences, and it allows emotional bonds that you might struggle to foster in a different environment to come through very quickly. um, and one of the other things I love about it is that it's not necessarily just contained to the building. So some of the things that I've done outside of school with my family, I've brought them laser tagging, and obviously I didn't take it easy on them. I made sure that they knew who was boss. Yeah, so then it was just I didn't play any games, but I treated them afterwards. We went to get some food at Popeyes, and so we do things like that. You might go to Five Guys, and that leads us as well some of those outside experiences outside of the family 40 minutes that we have every other day to the lounge. So the lounge is another space where students are able to just be themselves in the midst of all the craziness that we know happens day to day in high school. They're able to take some time to pause and just breathe. They're able to go and they check in the morning. That's the first thing that they do, and so that's great for us to be able to get a pulse on them to see what are they carrying in that backpack today, what are they bringing into their school day, and that's great for us to be able to foster communication with their teachers, and also for us to be able to support them throughout the day in communication with the family teachers. All students are able to eat their lunch in the lounge. We have a small kitchen in there, so sometimes during family, teachers will make breakfast or we'll do random and almost like sporadic type things where it might be a taco lunch or we might make pasta for everyone in the program. In the lounge, we have a TA who is the mother of the program. And she's just one of those people. Her name's Janelle. If everyone could have a Janelle in their life, the world would be a better place. And so the students all see her as someone that they can go to and turn to. And lounge becomes their safe space where now, it's been a really hectic day. Well, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to sit there and play Uno with my friends, which I had no idea how popular Uno was amongst high school students until, the lounge. And so that's really been a place where they can learn together. If you're a senior, you go in during your free blocks. If you are a junior, if you're in good standing academically, you're able to go during the study halls. And we build up privileges so that students are able to have both accountability, but also see some rewards along the way in their journey.
So another root of the Focus program is community building. And as we go through our presentation, and I'm sure many of you know that a important piece to students in school is feeling part of a community and feeling connections with the staff, feeling connections with the teacher. Like Matt mentioned, Janelle, our TA, we call her our Focus mom, but also feeling connections with each other. And yes, the lounge is for Focus members only. And that's part of how we create that honest and safe space for our Focus students, that if they're having a tough day, they know that the Focus Lounge is a safe space for them. We do a lot to build community. We'll talk a little bit more later about how we build community, but we do field trips. We build community within our family, within the grade levels. We try and treat our grade level cohorts as peers in that way. We create a community with a leadership structure where our students can be leaders for the program and voices for the program. And we also create community as the whole program. So we do some field trips, like a ropes field trip at the beginning of the year to get everybody bonded together. We do town hall meetings on a regular basis. We do rewards for students, and we recognize students who are doing well in each of the 4 A's. We do a Thanksgiving community service day and lunch, and we do that throughout the course of the year. We do community building, but the purpose of that is that Focus is a community. Your family is a community, and you're an important part of that community. And that's the message that many of our students don't receive in the larger school, but they do receive within the Focus program. And so we do our best to keep them in our school and to give them a community space. Sometimes I say the lounge is like your living room and your kitchen. And some of our students don't go home to that living room and kitchen that we'd hope that they would. So instead we created that space in our school where the students could feel safe and feel like they could just sit and get the support that they need. So I'm going to shift a little bit and take some time now to talk about some of the research behind why we do what we do in the Focus program. And I'm going to start with ACEs. And I know many of you have had a little bit of background in ACEs, so I'm just going to give a quick overview on what that is. ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, and it's based on a study that was done by Kaiser Permanente, and it was a longitudinal study based on a 10-question quiz. And what they did was they asked people what their childhood experience is with different kinds of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. And based on that 10-question quiz, they then followed those same people on a long-term basis to find out what their physical and mental health was later in life. And what they found was people who said questions or more related to abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction have a higher likelihood of mental illness and also chronic physical health conditions. And so not only does that childhood trauma and adverse childhood experiences, not only does it affect you in the moment, but it affects you very long term and later in life, and it severely impacts your development. So when you are experiencing what we call chronic stress and chronic stress and trauma, your brain doesn't, especially as a child, your brain doesn't develop as a typical brain would. You end up with higher levels of cortisol and adrenaline, which stunts your frontal and temporal lobe development, and therefore you're in a constant state of fight, flight, or freeze. So if anybody's interested in learning more about the study, learning more about ACEs, I can share some resources with you later. But it's very interesting as we work with our At Promise students, how many of them have experienced so many of those ACEs and look at those ACEs scores. A quick one, if anybody's interested in watching Paper Tigers, it was a documentary done a number of years ago at a school out in Washington, and it's very eye-opening to see the effects of ACEs and the things that our students deal with at school that then emotionally come and bring into the classroom and really shape the person who they become. And the important study for me as an educator is that what can help, what can counterbalance all of those ACEs and that brain development issues that our students are having is a strong connection with a trusted adult. And that's why we use the word family in our program. And that's why we use the word community in our program. And we use a lot of words like values and trust and safe and belong. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do an activity with you that we call the soda can activity. I've got my soda can right here. Everybody knows I'm a Diet Coke fan. But if you happen to have a soda can nearby, grab it. If you don't, just grab your invisible soda can and play along with us a little bit. And we're going to do an activity that is going to demonstrate what chronic stress, what impact that can have on a student. So if you have a soda can, grab it. If you don't have a soda can, grab your invisible one. And Matt's going to tell a little story for us. And every time he's going to tell a story about a 10th grade student in our school. And every time he mentions something that you think would be a stressor or have a negative impact on our student's day, shake your can a little bit. Okay, give it a little shake. And you listen to his story, listen to how our student Julian's day went, and we'll see what the result of stress is on Julian's life and how we as educators help Julian.
All right. Now, as I read this story, one of the things that you're going to experience, it's going to be using personal pronouns. And that's very intentional. It's designed for this to be something where put yourself in Julian's shoes and picture what this might be like if this was your day. You overslept your alarm and ran out of the house without breakfast. You checked to make sure your mom was home and tried to make the bus. You didn't make the bus, but you texted a friend who was driving, and he said he'd pick you up. You made it to school before first block, but didn't get to have breakfast from the cafeteria. You'll grab some food after first block from the school store. You get to first block global studies and realize you didn't do your homework. Last night was kind of busy at home. Your mom wasn't home, and you had to do dinner and story time for your little sister Lily. She's in first grade. Anyways, you ended up making it through class without the teacher checking it, so maybe you'll do it tonight or tomorrow. After first block, you go to the school store to get a muffin for breakfast. You get through the line and can't scarf it down fast enough. Although you made dinner for your sister, there wasn't much left for you. You left a note for your mom about getting more food, but you're not sure if she'll get more today. You make it to homeroom a little late, and Mrs. Smith was not happy. You tried to slink in without her noticing, but she always seems to notice. Second block was math. It went by pretty quickly. You like math. Seems to make sense. There's a pop quiz, but you know all the answers, and you felt pretty good about it. Finally, third block. Study hall. Time to get ready for that test in English that you didn't study for. And lunch. All was fine, but then, while you were studying the vocab, you get a text from your mom. She never made it home last night because your grandpa hasn't been well lately. She ended up bringing him to the hospital and she stayed with him. She texts you that she's not sure how much longer they'll be able to help him. You ask if you should leave school and go visit him in the hospital, but she tells you to stay in school. She wants you to take the bus home so you can be there for Lily. Your mom working a lot, you spent a lot of time with your grandpa. You want to visit him. You stop studying the vocab and try to find a friend who can drive you to the hospital. No luck. Make it through third block, go to English, take and bomb the vocab test. Take the bus home and spend the afternoon with Lily. Your mom asked you not to tell Lily about Grandpa. You spend the afternoon watching cartoons with her. It was a good afternoon for her. Not sure about dinner, but she'll figure it out. You always do. We're going to give you guys some time to do some reflection. Amy's going to drop some questions that will help guide your thinking in the chat. We're going to give you guys 5 minutes to write about things like, what do you do when the can enters your space? Would any of you right now want to shake that can, real or imaginary? Is it good to just let it all out? How do we respond to this? So we're going to give you guys 5 minutes, and I'll give you a heads up when we have one to go, and again at the end. And Amy will be monitoring the chat. We would love to see you guys put your thoughts in there, so please do. We encourage that. We want to hear from you guys because we can't see you. So it's very helpful knowing that there are humans on the other end of the screen. So thank you so much, and your 5 minutes begins now. We have about a minute remaining. All right, it's time.
Great. So we got some interesting, thoughts in the chat. Please feel free to continue. Writing. One of the things, and we certainly see this in focus, as Matt said, we have a little over 70 students. And when you have students entering your space with a shaken can, you've got 25 shaken cans or 10 shaken cans or 30. If we'll imagine having those 25. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why the community piece is so important in our program, is because sometimes when you foster that trust and values within the peers, within the students, and perhaps this is something more feasible with older students, but oftentimes it's other students who help let out that pressure easily, like you said, Lisa, let out that pressure slowly and open that can. And so we're all working together as a community. And I'm not saying that teachers or students are equal in this program, but we do help students be leaders and supportive for each other. I think that being honest and sincere, Deborah mentioned, meeting each of your students with a sincere hello and looking in their eyes. And that's something that we try to do. We give all of our students a place to check in the morning. And that's how we can see, okay, how shaken is our can today, and what level of support do our students need throughout the course of the day. The idea of making a choice between being proactive and reactive is a really interesting one that came up in the chat, Matt. It's a lot of balance, I think, and it's a lot of priorities. And sometimes we all know our days become really hectic and busy. And what do you have time? Whose can do you have time to open that day, and whose can don't you? And there is no right or wrong answer really to this, but I kind of would leave you with the idea of our goal as a program is to make sure everyone feels that they can open their can. Because if people feel like you can't open your can, then how are you supposed to learn? So I'm going to open my can and take a drink, because I did let the pressure out nicely and I let it settle a little bit. And sometimes, and Matt, I know you see this sometimes in your classroom, sometimes when you have that one-on-one relationship with a student, they can come into my office and we close the door and they can let their can open, because sometimes it's okay. And even as adults, we need to let that vent out sometimes and then have a healthy way to move on. And I think that's part of our role as educators and mentors for our students is, when your can is shaken up, how do you recognize that it's shaken up? And how do you allow yourself to find that trusted adult or find that trusted peer so that you can let out your own pressure slowly? And as Matt talked about, the 4 A's of our program, and that progress monitoring piece is really important, because we encourage our students to help take a very active role in their own progress monitoring, so that by the time they graduate, and hopefully before then, but by the time they graduate, they can recognize how shaken their can is and say, hey, geez, this is just a terrible day. It's a terrible week. 2020 is a terrible real year, right, everyone? And I need somebody who can help me open my can. And we all connect differently to different people. And that's something that we look at in the staff of our program, is that we're all a little bit different, and we all connect to different students differently. And our students need that. This is, a really interesting activity, the metaphor of the shaking can and chronic stress and trauma, as we think about our students that enter our spaces in whatever your role might be. So it's just, something that we'd like to leave you with today is a thought of there are many ways to help open that can. And sometimes it is meet them sincerely and look them in the eye. And sometimes that is building up trust over a long period of time so that they feel comfortable with you and so that they genuinely know you as a person, which I find goes such a long way. So that's the idea of the ACEs study and how we use it in our program. The next concept we're going to talk about is restorative practices. And I know that many people know the term restorative justice. There's a National Coalition for Restorative Justice, which in order to get trained requires at least a week of initial training and a couple of days of annual training. It's a very time-intensive and resource-intensive program. But from that program, there are a lot of takeaways that you can use without having that designated work. The Center of Restorative Justice are restorative circles, and I'm not sure about your respite program or Schenectady, but within our focus program, the family that Matt is talking about, we've taken to using those circles because we have that structure in place. If you don't have that structure in place, there are still some things that you could do that are restorative. So one of the things that I felt was eye-opening for me as I really understood the difference between restorative practices and a more traditional practice is what's called the social discipline window, which you see on your screen right now. And we're going to get, eventually we're going to get to the top right to that restorative. We're going to start at the top left, which is the punitive. So we're going to give you an example of a teacher swearing at a student and how you respond. And this could be at any level. And the first question is, if you are punitive, if you are doing something to the student, okay? So an example, if a teacher is swearing at a student and that teacher says, this kid needs attention, and you're doing something, consequence, it's punitive. We'll find out what the next steps are after that. Then we go to the bottom left and you ignore it. You say, you know what? I've got 24 other open cans. I can't deal with it right now. I'm just going to ignore it. That's neglectful. And I'm not saying that's a pretty strong word to use. Address every little issue that happens in your space, but for that particular issue, that's what it would be. Bottom right, when you do something for a student, when you're permissive, if you're someone who says, you know what, it's okay, that's fine. I know you're not supposed to do that, but don't worry about it. You're being permissive. Whereas at the top right, if you choose to have a dialogue with the student and you choose to not just do something to them and choose the consequence, but if you talk about accountability with the student, then you're being restorative. And the whole idea of restorative practices is that you're taking what was once broken and you're looking to restore it. Okay, whereas if you're doing the traditional detention model, you are looking to put a Band-Aid on something that broke. It's not going to fix it. It's just going to Band-Aid it so that maybe it won't look so bad. Maybe you're just going to throw Nakudo paint over it. You're not actually going to fix it. But if you're doing something collaboratively with the student, then you're making some restorative inroads. So we're going to take a look, Matt, at the next slide where you can see a little bit more examples of what each of these 4 windows would be. So if we start at the top left again, that detention, your student swearing at a teacher, you're going to give them a detention. You're going to end up with a power struggle. You're going to end up with a confrontation, and it is win or lose. You're going to win that battle or you're going to lose that battle. If you lose, it's going to escalate even further. And you don't end up teaching really the student anything. And I think we've seen through research and we've also seen in practice that detentions overall don't deter behavior. Then in the bottom left, if we go to neglectful, you are ignoring the problem, you're in survival mode, and that's why you're doing that neglectful corner, because you've got so many things going on that you're just trying to survive. And it really means that it's just going to keep happening. And so you're not going to get out of that survival cycle, which hopefully isn't the goal. At the bottom right, that permissive piece, you're just making excuses. You're being protective. People can defend that, and I understand that. But when we're looking for growth, really a linchpin of the focus program, our big goal is personal growth. As I mentioned before, students enter the program because they've made a decision. They want to do something different. They want to be different. thing in their life or in who they are that they feel, geez, I don't like the way this is going. I want to do something different. And so we've kind of chosen students program because they want to problem solve. They want to have a collaborative relationship with staff. They're ready for it. And that's a big piece of it. So what to do is we'd like to give you, again, right, Matt, a moment to think and write. So I'm just looking at the time if we can do, I think we can do 5 minutes. And what I'm going to ask you to do is think about how you might shift a practice. Where is something in your practice working with students that you are in one of the other windows, the punitive, the neglectful, the permissive, and you feel like you could change your towards the restorative model? And again, I'm to invest a lot of time or resources or people to this, but what is something that you do in your world that you feel like you could do in a more restorative way?
Time starts now.
And again, I'll be posting some questions in the chat. Feel free to add anything that you reflect.
About 1 minute left, everyone. Yeah, it's time.
Great comments in the chat here. And so, take a breath before responding. And it sounds like such a simple response, but it's so meaningful and it's so easy because honestly, working with students, as I mentioned in the chat, is just such a personal job. And, I know many of us take it personally because we care so deeply, but it is really important to try not to get worked up in the individual situation. But that really can be difficult. Lisa mentions that we know suspensions in traditional discipline doesn't work, and I totally agree. And to me, that's more of a systemic policy issue. And first, how do we change our policies? And second, how do we get people on board to really understand how important this is? Spread this type of training and help people understand specific examples. I think it would be really helpful. And Deborah talks about really asking clear questions and taking the time to listen, because being a better listener, you can really hear stories. And Louise, I'm totally with you. Oftentimes students are sent to administrative offices, and you're trying to appease the teacher. You're trying to keep the student accountable, but at the same time, what works and what really doesn't. So I agree. It's worth the time and effort. It is a lot of time and effort, but it's worth the time and effort that it takes to really unpack what's going on in a particular situation. So thank you, everybody, for your participation. Feel free to continue adding to the chat as we move on.
All right. And I want to echo in sentiments. We love seeing and hearing what you guys are writing and what you're thinking and what this means to you. And as you're fostering those thoughts, we're going to give you 3 different student profiles. These are all recent students. And we're going to just walk you through something that we set in place in the beginning, that notion that each student is different, that they experience trauma in unique ways, and that it manifests different. And we'll start off with Donovan. Now, Donovan is a student that I feel like it'd be a safe bet that many, if not all of you, know or have a Donovan. Donovan was someone that many teachers really struggled to see beyond some of those initial things. Donovan was someone where you get into trouble, not make the best decisions, and in many cases could be written off as being a troublemaker, as being someone who, I don't know if this kid's ever going to get it together. I don't know if he's got what it takes to be able to make it through. Where is he going to be? He's the person that, in this faculty room, the conversation may be, oh, I wonder where he's going to be in 5 years. That's the student that Donovan was. And what's so beautiful about Donovan's story, he joined our program as a sophomore, and his story is anything but those narratives that had been placed on him. His story is anything but the notion of he's not going to make it. Donovan is currently one of the leaders in our program. He is one of the most vocal proponents of focus. I had the honor and privilege of teaching him in U.S. history this year. Not only was he one of the top achieving students in my class, but he was also someone who functioned as a bit of social glue. When people whenever we did projects, he was willing to work with whomever, whenever, and earnestly so. He is one of the friendliest students that I have come across. and he has a heart of gold. And truthfully, I am so grateful that we have him for one more year and are going to get to work with him and see where he goes from this. Mark Way,
I am too.
he,
I am too.
yeah.
I am too, Matt. And I'm just going to add about Donovan. The interesting piece about Donovan, as I listened to you tell his story, and I wrote in the chat that this is something we do as a staff, how to move forward. But it's interesting how, only 2.5 years ago, teachers saw Donovan as a troublemaker, and now he's somebody that we go to as a leader and somebody that we go to help peers. And really what it took is bringing him into a community and the power that has had in his life, to see that there are adults who can be genuinely there for him and not disappoint him. And it's really amazing to see his dedication to this community that we've created, after we've brought him in.
It's amazing. That's exactly what it is. It's the community. And that's going to be a link that we see for all 3D students. That community aspect is essential for all of them. That honestly is the biggest common thread with all of them. And with Mark Way, he's a student that if you just picture ways life can go wrong, and I wish I was exaggerating or being facetious with this, but if you just picture like the amount of body blows and face shots that life can give you and just add them up and keep adding them up, that in many ways is his story. Mark Way, when he came to us, when he transferred even to our district, one of the things that he has said, and this is in his own words, he felt graduation wasn't even something that wasn't a pipe dream. That just wasn't going to happen. That wasn't something that was down the line. He didn't see himself having friends. He didn't see himself joining a community. He didn't see himself fitting in. Like Donovan, he struggled with different family-related troubles, and part of this, I'm intentionally staying away from too many personal details because just for student confidentiality reasons. But McQuay, he just, really life. He's been through a lot, and one of the things that will never leave me, a lot of things with him will never leave me. The fact that he sits there and in that lounge space, he is a magnet. People love being around him. They love spending any time with him, talking to him. And he has one of those smiles where you can't help but smile alongside of him. And what he said was that he really does feel like this program saved him. He felt like that sense of community, that sense of belonging, it gave him something that he didn't think he would ever have. He didn't feel like he would have a home or people that he would belong with. And he stated that this program is something that for him, he wishes that this was his actual family, that this was his biological family. Now, I had the privilege of having him in family, and to this day, he still calls me dad. And he's one of the kids who's made me cry on more than one occasions, crying with him, but also just the things that, just seeing his growth. It's one of the, it's just truly an amazing story. And he's now graduated. He has his own apartment. He's held, steady jobs, and he's truly a success story. Liam comes from a slightly different angle than what we saw with Donovan and Mark Way. Liam was an honor student. Liam was someone that teachers really loved being around. Liam, in fact, was very involved in the school community, leading the stage crew, designing sets. One set that even went to Proctor's, they asked if they could have it because they thought it was great. And so Liam, on the surface, had a lot of things going very, very great. But what Liam struggled with were a lot of issues surrounding gender and gender identity and acceptance in home. And so for Liam, and as well as for Donovan from Mark Way, I want to be very clear that this was not, and I don't want to paint the focus program as, hey, you enter in, student comes in and they just come out magically, we solved every issue and that any challenge in life are gone. That's not the case. For Liam, this was across a number of years, trying to find out, who was he and who did he want to be? How did he feel? Where did he felt he belonged? What did he need? And so for Liam, we saw a couple of stages in his transition. And so Liam is another student who that trauma, and if you just look at things from a one-dimensional point of view, you would miss a lot of that. And so there's not just one focus, and there's not just one way that we've seen trauma manifest, but one thing that is absolutely a common thread between all of our kids is that sense of community, that sense of belonging, and knowing that there are adults and other students who care and who genuinely love them simply for who they are. Now, what we see going through that, so that every day in the lounge, mentioning even with Marquay and how that's really something where he was a magnet there, and where Donovan's the leader there, and where we saw the same kind of thing happening with Liam, that every day where kids are able to take a pause from the stresses and the constant bombardment, the pressure that they feel. We all know how much pressure high school students are under. It's enormous. And so that lounge is an essential part where students are able to talk to one another and just be in each other's presence. In some of our special events, we do things like a rope trip in the beginning that Amy mentioned, where you might have a kid who struggles with a fear of heights, and then they see below them 60, 70 kids cheering on for them. And when they overcome that fear of heights, and when other people see them overcome that fear, other things and other obstacles in their lives all of a sudden seem a lot more doable. And we have a banquet, and we have a lot of different things that we do throughout the year with the goal of trying to provide for students a venue for them to be able to express themselves and also to enjoy and partake in our community.
So, as we're talking about this program, I'm sure you can imagine that it's really hard to have a program like this without some staff and without some support. So we mentioned before that we have teachers in the different content areas that teach family and that also teach them for focus, which we try and keep down at a lower class size. But we also have that teaching assistant that Matt mentioned a couple times, Janelle in our lounge, who really is our focus mom. I mean, when you think of the roles that you would hope a mom would do, bring the whole family together, bring the community together, be that first person that our students go to when they need something. And so she's kind of our go-to person. Oh, does anybody know what's going on with Janae today? Does anybody know what's going on with Donovan today? Does anybody know what's going on with Marquay today? And she really is our communicator, especially between home and school. She has a really close connection with a lot of our parents, which is different from a teaching assistant role for many people. As far as clerical and administrative support, as the assistant principal, I am the administrative support for the program as well as my secretary. We meet every other day as a staff to plan our community events, but also to talk about individual students. Sometimes we'll bring students into our staff meeting, and sometimes it's because they're struggling with one of the 4As or they're going through a difficult time, and we want to be there to remind them, like, hey, you got this, and we're right behind you on this together. What can we do differently to help support you, and what can you do differently? And sometimes it's, geez, just like regular families, program goes through their ups and downs, and we'll want to bring students in to say, hey, help us out here. We're really struggling with this issue. We've had program-wide issues with things like gender, things just like interpersonal connections between students, or different issues and how they fit in a larger school. And so it's really important for us to have that student voice and to have a place where our teachers are meeting regularly and collaborating regularly. I will say this program, as much as we love working in the program, it can be more tiring than a typical assignment. And so it's really important to provide that support on that day-to-day basis. And the last thing, as far as support goes, that's really critical is district support. Our district really supports our program. As I mentioned, it's been around for more than 40 years. And so they understand. Matt said they come to our Thanksgiving lunch, but they also understand the different supports that we might need. And so that piece of it is very important as well. I see that we're running out of time here. If we had 3 hours, we could certainly fill the 3 hours. But I really want to say thank you to everybody who participated in our chat and are just interested in our program. I'm going to throw my email address in the chat so that if anybody has any questions moving forward, or needs some help, or just wants to talk it through a little bit more, please feel free to reach out. I know Matt's going to do the same. Matt, anything else to share?
Yes, I'm putting in the chat right now a Google form for everyone. It's just a quick exit thing that's going to help us. It's a reflective piece for our end. It's only 4 questions, maybe 5 tops. So it should be really quick, but we
It's been
great.
really helpful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you everybody so much for your time today on this hot afternoon. We really appreciate and we can genuinely say that it just the work that we've been doing is such a difference. It's really important. It's important work, so keep doing it. Thanks everybody.
Yes. And thank you. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thank you both for another wonderful, wonderful end of the day.
You
Good
too.
stuff. Good stuff.
Look how fast it flies by.
Right? Seriously, if we had 3 hours, we'd fill it.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. And goes the time.
Yeah, and scene. Let's think about that podcast idea, Matt. I feel like, All right, so I just Muppet Hamilton, who's your favorite Muppet character who does a Hamilton character?
Oh God. I'm gonna have to go Kermit. I love it.
You don't like Angelica?
Okay.
We've made Ed
The
curious.
voice-
He's
the
going to go
voice
check
is
it
what
out.
does
You
it.
better.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Ed, you
Yeah.
really need to. You need.
Ed Fosse, Lafayette, like how he
Yes.
can't quite keep up. Yeah, it's been entertaining in our house for a while. It's revived our Hamilton a little bit.
Mhm.
And listening to Elena sing Hamilton as Kermit is pretty funny.
I'm writing a note to go and watch the Muppets Hamilton.
You're gonna have to. Unfortunately, it's just audio, but it's still completely worth it.
Yeah, that's okay.
I just don't want to get our hopes up too high, but it's really. That's all I'm
It's
gonna
great.
say.
Yeah, even in your in commute. Not that anyone's really commuting as much anymore, but that
Right.
it's one of those
No,
things
good
where
stuff.
that's me. Yes.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff. All right, Matt, I'm gonna go cook some lobsters. I'll see you later.
Wow.
Thank you again
Hey,
very
thank you
much.
both.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I
Thank
look
you.
forward to seeing you guys in person someday and
Right.
sharing some stories about programs. But I love what you guys are doing. It's just great stuff. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for doing
For
this.
sure.
Absolutely.
And taking time away from your vacation too.
Bye bye.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Matt.
Bye. Be well.
You too.